By 1914, the European powers had effectively fully divided the world among themselves. Africa was almost entirely colonized, much of Asia was conquered or partitioned, and the few remaining independent regions existed largely because rival powers blocked one another. Imperial expansion was no longer about taking new land, resources, or markets, but about seizing them from other empires. At the same time, capitalism itself was changing. Instead of many small firms competing at home, huge corporations began to dominate their national markets. Once those markets were saturated, they began exporting capital abroad in search of higher profits. So economic competition was no longer just between companies, but between states backing their national industries. This transformed economic rivalry into geopolitical rivalry, intensifying tensions among the major powers and making conflict among capitalist states increasingly difficult to avoid. Industrialization had also produced new contenders: Germany, the United States, Japan, Italy, and Russia, who could now challenge older imperial leaders like Britain and France. Germany's rise was especially destabilizing. It had become Europe's leading industrial power, but lacked a large overseas empire, and it really wanted one, so it quickly came into direct conflict with Britain and France. And soon, arms races, railway projects, and secret alliance systems locked states into opposing blocs. But while states competed with one another abroad, they were facing a growing crisis at home. Socialist movements had grown dramatically, and unlike earlier revolts, they were ideologically coherent, internationally connected, and openly committed to ending capitalism. And as workers continued to organize, ordinary people began to gain power and threaten traditional hierarchies by demanding democratization and massification of politics. So, war appeared to offer a solution. It could restore discipline and authority, redirect social conflict outward, and halt or even reverse revolutionary momentum. Many in the elite believed that there was a race between war and revolution. And there was one crucial belief. War had usually been relatively short, and the recent wars in the Balkans had reinforced this belief. As a result, many leaders honestly believed that any coming war would not last very long, cause manageable casualties, and renew the nation and its prestige. This lowered the political cost of choosing war. In June 1914, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, decided to visit a recently annexed region that hated him. His visit would coincide with an important national holiday, and he ignored security concerns about assassination plots against him. To top it off, he drove in an open-top car around Sarajevo. So, yeah, you know what happened. His assassination was the trigger for a conflict that had been brewing for many years. In fact, the European powers had been on the brink of war a few times already. Austria-Hungary issued an ultimatum to Serbia that was designed to be unacceptable, so that war would be justified. During the July crisis that followed, some political leaders did their best to stop the coming war. Tsar Nicholas II, war is coming! We must mobilize the army! I don't know. Our failed war against Japan already caused a revolution that almost overthrew me. A bigger one could be the end for me and my dynasty. Mobilize only part of the army and only against Austria-Hungary. I'll text the German Kaiser. I beg you in the name of our old friendship to do what you can to stop your allies from going too far. I am exerting my utmost influence to induce the Austrians to deal straightly, to arrive at a satisfactory understanding with you. That's great news! Maybe we can reach an understanding with Austria-Hungary and remain only a spectator in their conflict with Serbia. Cancel the partial mobilization. Cancel the mobilization? Yes, cancel it. I'm sorry, do you think we are an age of empires? Do you think I can just click the cancel mobilization research button and get a refund? Well, I thought that we have already started moving millions of soldiers. Railways are locked, thousands of trains are running right now, hauling troops, horses, artillery, food and ammunition. Do you think they can just reverse? I just assumed that. Did you think of the logistical nightmare that would create? Did you? And what if our enemies decide to attack us during that chaos? Did you think of that? Huh? Did you? The Russian army is partially mobilizing. We have no choice but to do the same. No, we don't have to escalate this. I can still talk to Nicholas. Sure, here. You go talk to him over there while we grown-ups prepare for war, okay? Okay. The Germans are mobilizing against us. If we don't order a full mobilization now, our Polish provinces will be unprotected. Go ahead then. At the same time, the German Chancellor urged Austria not to mobilize against Russia. But that same morning, the chief of the German General Staff, General Moltke, urged Austria to mobilize against Russia immediately. Austria decided to mobilize, and Germany sent Russia an ultimatum. Seize every war measure against us and Austria-Hungary within 12 hours. Russia rejected this. Germany prepared to declare war on Russia and asked France to stay out, which they refused, and mobilized 3 million soldiers, although they did not declare war. In 1907, Socialists had met at the Stuttgart Congress to oppose the coming war. If war is declared, the working classes in the countries affected, as well as their parliamentary representatives, have the duty to mobilize their forces to prevent hostilities from breaking out. If, in spite of their efforts, war should break out, their duty is to struggle actively for a speedy end to the fighting and make every effort to use the economic and political crisis which the war causes to rouse the people and hasten the abolition of the rule of the capitalist class. This resolution was unanimously reaffirmed at Basel in 1912. And these were not empty words. At that point, Socialist and Labour parties represented millions of organized workers with mass unions, newspapers, and parliamentary influence. In 1905, the Russian Revolution shook the Tsar and introduced workers' councils. Belfast saw massive dog strikes, New York saw women-led strikes in 1909, and Massachusetts saw the Bread and Roses strike in 1912. Even bigger strikes occurred in Italy, Spain, and Germany. Between 1910 and 1914, Britain went through the Great Labour Unrest as massive strikes hit every major industry and radical ideas spread rapidly. Labour militancy was increasing throughout the Western world, forming what on paper would be the largest anti-war force in history. But when war broke out, this commitment collapsed almost everywhere. Despite years of inner nationalist rhetoric, most socialist leaders abandoned opposition and endorsed national unity. They voted for war credits, suspended strikes, and integrated themselves into wartime governments. Only a few parties kept their word: the Bolsheviks in Russia and the Serbian and Bulgarian socialists. Elsewhere, anti-war socialists became small minorities. And nowhere was this clearer than in Germany. Its Social Democratic Party, SPD, was the largest and most influential socialist party in the world. Even in late July 1914, it helped organize mass anti-war demonstrations. But on August 4th, despite its commitment to vote against war credits, the SPD voted unanimously in favor. Why did they do that? There are a few key factors. Socialist politicians had achieved some important improvements to worker conditions by working within the system and had integrated into capitalist institutions. As a result, they preferred gradual reform to revolution. And after seeing the workers' wealth in their nation improve after colonial wars, they no longer hated the idea. Additionally, opposing the war could lead to a government crackdown, and supporting a revolution could end badly. So they chose what they saw as the lesser evil, which was to support the war. Another reason for supporting the war was social chauvinism. Socialists claimed that other nations were barbaric and imperialist and had to be defeated at all costs. German socialists fought against Russian autocracy, the French against German militarism, and the British for democracy. So class solidarity gave way to national loyalty, and workers who had recently been striking and organizing were now mobilized into disciplined hierarchies, preparing to fight fellow workers across borders. Socialist opposition to the war died quickly, sometimes literally. In France, the most powerful anti-war voice, Jean Jaurès, was assassinated, and socialist leaders rallied to the Union Sacrée, a political truce in which they agreed to abandon opposition to the war, halt all strikes, and declared national unity to be more important than class solidarity. In Britain, labor leaders had initially opposed the war. Workers of Great Britain, down with the war. You have no quarrel with the workers of Europe. They have no quarrel with you. The quarrel is between the ruling classes of Europe. Don't make their quarrels yours. But now they joined the wartime government, while trade unions pledged not to strike, ending the Great Unrest. Anti-war editors now wrote, "I am strong of opinion that the war ought not to have taken place, and that we ought not to have become parties to it. But once in it, the whole future of our nation is at stake, and we have no choice but to do the utmost we can to secure success." In Russia, both Bolsheviks and Mensheviks initially opposed the war and voted against war credits, but repression quickly neutralized parliamentary opposition. But revolutionary socialists saw the reformist support of war as treason. Lenin, who was living in exile in Switzerland, was so shocked that he initially believed the reports were misinformation created by the government to deceive workers into supporting the war. He condemned it as an imperialist struggle for markets and resources, waged for the right to pillage foreign nations while suppressing revolutionary movements by making workers kill each other for the benefit of the bourgeoisie. But as war was now unavoidable, he decided to go for a, let's say, creative approach. I'm German, and I hope Germany wins. I'm French, and I hope France wins. I'm British, and I hope Britain wins. I hope Russia loses. To be fair to Lenin, his thought process went something like this. Any imperialist state that won would only be strengthened, making a socialist revolution much more difficult and prolonging the oppression of the proletariat. But defeat would create the conditions for revolution, so he called on socialists to transform the imperialist war into class war. Despite this opposition to the war, many really were excited. Decades of nationalist pride and the impact of state-organized propaganda had made people genuinely believe that the war would be short and glorious, so crowds celebrated the start of the war. People also simply had no idea of the magnitude of the war that would come. In Munich, amidst the crowd was a young Adolf Hitler who volunteered to join the army. To ensure support of the war did not fade, governments restricted the press, influenced schools and churches, and spread atrocity stories of rival nations. On August 2, 1914, German patrols crossed into France for the first time since the Franco-Prussian War. That same day, Britain mobilized its navy and assured France it would protect her. Germany issued an ultimatum to Belgium, demanding free passage for its army or else. Belgium chose else. Belgium's neutrality had been guaranteed by the Treaty of London, but Germany dismissed the treaty as a scrap of paper, declared war on France, and crossed into Belgian territory. While Britain had no formal obligation to defend France, it was bound to uphold Belgian neutrality, so it issued an ultimatum to Germany. It was ignored, and Britain declared war. Italy, Portugal, Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, and the Ottoman Empire remained neutral, watching for opportunities to enter the conflict if they felt something could be gained. Germany had long known it would eventually fight both France and Russia, so General Schlieffen had designed a plan to avoid a prolonged two-front war. The aim was to defeat France quickly by attacking through the Netherlands and Belgium, bypassing French fortifications and capturing Paris within 6 weeks. Schlieffen's successor, General Moltke, modified the plan by excluding the invasion of the Netherlands. Germany had assumed that Belgium would offer little to no resistance, and they were wrong. Belgians held out in fortresses like Liège much longer than the Germans had anticipated, and when retreating, they destroyed railways and bridges to slow them down, severely disrupting their timetable. While in Belgium, the Germans carried out many atrocities. Some were deliberate, meant to terrorize the population into submission. Others were carried out in retaliation against suspected frontiers, or simply out of frustration as the advance slowed. They murdered around 50 villagers in Seal, gathered and executed hundreds of men in Tamine, and killed over 600 people in Dinant, including women and children, while German zeppelins bombed Belgian cities. The Germans burnt the town of Louvain and executed its inhabitants after a Belgian counterattack. The Allies weaponized these atrocities, amplifying and exaggerating them as propaganda to frame the war as a moral crusade. France launched offensives to retake Alsace-Lorraine, the Battle of the Frontiers. They failed, with heavy casualties. The British Expeditionary Force first faced the Germans at Mons, but was forced to retreat under pressure. The German advance toward Paris was finally halted in the First Battle of the Marne, just outside the capital. Both sides suffered immense losses. They then moved north, trying to outflank each other in what became the race to the sea. And just before the Germans overran the Belgian defenders, the Belgians pulled a desperate move. For king and for country, they flooded the river. Their standard sir would be the end of the race to the sea. Sorry, couldn't help myself. Belgium flooded the lowlands and effectively halted the German advance, retaining a small but symbolically important piece of their territory. During the fighting, both sides had dug trenches to protect themselves from artillery and machine gun fire. These trenches now ran all the way from the Channel to Switzerland. And defensive capabilities had evolved much faster than offensive ones, so during the coming years, both sides would lose millions of men, trying and failing to break the other's defenses. Russia was ready much faster than Germany had anticipated. Germany struggled at first, until Hindenburg and Ludendorff took over and won important victories. How did they do this? Well... Hello, fellow Russian general. I am calling you on this unencrypted phone line to share all my battle plans, and I will spare no detail, number, location, timing, everything. Wonderful! But first, I would like to let you know that my army is currently moving away from yours. If you were to be attacked by the Germans, I would be unable to assist you. Wow, I'd be really worried if we weren't using the VPN from today's sponsor. Sorry guys, no VPN this time. Wait, so that means that... The Russians suffered crushing defeats at Tannenberg and at the First Battle of the Masurian Lakes. In the meantime, Austria-Hungary was getting beaten by both Serbia and Russia, suffering over 300,000 casualties, and it became clear that it could not operate without strong German support. They also carried out mass executions in Serbia and burned down entire villages. In late October, the Ottoman Empire entered the war and attacked Russian targets in the Black Sea, hoping to gain enough from the conflict to stave off its impending collapse. Okay, now for real, because I do got a family to feed. I'm excited to announce the first official Things I Care About Study Buddy plushie, inspired by the channel's mascot. Quick comment, you may notice he's got a body now. The main reason is that I wanted him to wear a World War I uniform, and I couldn't make it fit otherwise. The study buddy is designed to psychologically pressure you into working on your dreams. If you procrastinate, he'll be disappointed. And trust me, you don't want to disappoint him. It's available for a limited time only on YouTube. If you want one, get it now, because it will be gone in 4 weeks and it's never coming back. And by buying it, you will be directly supporting my channel. The war quickly became global as allies seized the German colony of Togoland and moved against German Southwest Africa and East Africa. Japan seized German holdings in Asia, while forces from Australia and New Zealand took its Pacific territories. All sides used the locals as manual labor and fighters, causing tremendous suffering to people who had little idea what they were dying for. Britain captured Basra in Mesopotamia, trying to secure oil, while Ottoman and Russian forces fought in the Caucasus. The war was supposed to be over by Christmas, but by the end of 1914, despite almost 1 million casualties, it was becoming evident that there would be no quick victory, and instead of glory and adventure, all the masses would get would be industrialized slaughter. To keep morale high both at the front and at home, all states relied heavily on propaganda and suppressed dissent. Defeats were reframed as victories, enemy atrocity stories emphasized their barbarism, and one side's own atrocities were simply ignored. Propaganda framed the conflict as defensive, as a war forced upon us, democracy versus dictatorships. Pacifists and dissenters were demonized as traitors. Religious leaders portrayed the war as sacred and made up some, creative stories. In Britain, and I kid you not, the retreat at Mons was told as a miraculous victory in which literal angels and ghost medieval archers from the Battle of Agincourt protected the British soldiers. I'm serious, look it up. At first, many civilians accepted the propaganda because the enemy really was committing atrocities, and decades of colonial violence had normalized extreme brutality. Many also wanted to believe that victory would make the sacrifice worthwhile. But as exaggerations piled up, people began to distrust all official information, even the truth. And as casualties mounted and contradictions multiplied, trust turned into skepticism, and then into resentment and a deep sense of betrayal. Soldiers who directly experienced the front were among the first to reject official narratives. They referred to propaganda as brain stuffing and deeply resented calls to fight until the end, despite massive losses. Soldiers also saw class divisions being reproduced inside the military. Across all armies, officers were drawn largely from social elites, and enlisted men were treated as inferiors. Ordinary troops were transported in cattle cars. Their commanders traveled in first-class comfort. They also enjoyed better food, housing, hygiene, medical care, and leave, and were informed about the war, while soldiers were deliberately kept in the dark. Men were forced to march, often without knowing where they were going or why. This enforced ignorance bred fear, rumors, and resentment. Inequality persisted even in death. Officers received individual graves and their families formal notifications, while enlisted men were buried in mass graves and their families received impersonal notices. But what was most infuriating to soldiers was that many officers sent men to their deaths while remaining safely in the rear. And while soldiers who tried to withdraw were threatened or shot for cowardice, officers who retreated faced few consequences. In France alone, hundreds were executed. In Britain, thousands were sentenced to death and hundreds executed, almost all common soldiers. Political dissent, union activity, suspected self-injury, or refusal to advance could all be punished by death. But officers who ordered disastrous attacks often faced no consequences. These practices convinced many soldiers that the greatest threat to their survival came not from the enemy in front of them, but from the authority behind them. So some soldiers, especially in quieter sectors of the front, found ways to protect themselves and their fellow workers on the other side of no man's land in what was called live and let live. They fired less than required and deliberately aimed high to miss. They fired at the same time each day so the enemy could take cover and avoided firing during meal hours. Sometimes they even observed unofficial truces to recover the wounded or bury the dead. In certain cases, this extended to exchanges of food, tobacco, or simple conversation. The most famous example was the Christmas truce of 1914. Beginning near Ypres, German soldiers sang Silent Night and British troops responded. They then met in no man's land, shared food and alcohol, buried the dead, and in some areas even played football. Similar truces occurred across the British-German, French-German, Belgian-German, and even Russian-Austro-Hungarian fronts, as soldiers saw they had more in common with each other than with their superiors. But the High Command did not like this at all. This fraternization could threaten their war plans, so they issued explicit orders to suppress truces, intensify bombardments during holidays, and punish participants. Fun fact, Adolf Hitler heavily opposed fraternization even as a soldier. Shocker! The war would mobilize entire societies on a scale never seen before. In France and Germany, roughly 80% of men of military age were conscripted into the armed forces. In Austria-Hungary, the figure was about 75%, while Britain, Serbia, and the Ottoman Empire mobilized between 50 and 60%. Russia sent roughly 16 million men into war. Never before had such a large share of the population been absorbed into military service. And with millions of men at the front, women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers. In Britain alone, female employment rose by more than 1.3 million during the war. Women organized, unionized, and challenged established gender norms. Well into 1915, despite massive offensive with mind-blowing casualties, there had been little territorial change. During the Second Battle of Ypres, Germany used poison gas on a large scale, but its brutality was not enough to break the stalemate. The British and French also began to use poison gas shortly after. They then attempted to open a new front and send ships to the Dardanelles, but many were sunk by mines, so they shifted to a land campaign at Gallipoli, where the British, with major Anzac involvement, would also run into a brutal stalemate until they withdrew later in the year. During this period, the Ottoman government began the mass deportation and destruction of Armenians, accusing them of disloyalty and collaboration with the enemy. Entire communities were driven from their homes and on death marches toward the Syrian desert under horrible conditions. Over 1 million died. The Turkish state continues to deny that this was a genocide. In the meantime, a joint German and Austro-Hungarian offensive in 1915 shattered Russian positions, and the Germans captured Warsaw. Tsar Nicholas II decided to take personal control of the army, tying his fate to the outcome of the war. Hoping to get territories from Austria-Hungary, Italy joined the Allies and attacked its former partner, but also got stuck in a stalemate, throwing soldiers into the meat grinder for the entirety of the war. Allied troops landed in Greece to open a new front, but Bulgaria, wanting additional territories, joined the Central Powers, and together they overran Serbia, whose army was forced to escape through Albania into the sea. The British also attempted to advance toward Baghdad, but were forced back and besieged at Kut. Britain maintained a naval blockade against Germany, to which the Germans responded with submarine warfare, aiming to starve Britain by cutting off shipping, including neutral trade. In May 1915, a German U-boat sank the RMS Lusitania, killing roughly 1,200 people, including over 100 Americans. The Germans claimed the ship carried war-related cargo, which, to be fair, it did. But the Americans were still understandably upset about this. Fearing they would join the war, Germany decided to moderate its attacks for some time. Alright boys, it's the end of 1915 and we are no closer to winning this war than we were last year. Who's got ideas to break the stalemate? Nuke them! No! Wrong video, MacArthur. What if we sue for peace? This war is clearly not going anywhere and no one will really win. So I think it would be better if we just... Wait! I got it! I have managed to scientifically solve the stalemate of World War I. Great! Do tell! What do you mean, one? Listen, this is pure math. We sent tens of thousands of soldiers and they got slaughtered and the attack failed. Wait, but which battle are you talking about? The Second Battle of Ypres? Artois? Champagne? Loos? Yes. So, listen, if we had sent 10 million soldiers, would we have won? Maybe. I guess they would have run out of bullets and people eventually. Exactly! Mathematically speaking, a number of soldiers exists for which we will break through the enemy's ranks and win a decisive victory that will end the war. So basically more of the same? You know the saying, if it's broken, don't fix it. What are the soldiers gonna do anyways? Revolt?